Kaimere is a distant planet. It is defined by waves of life brought from Earth and set free to evolve independently in this new context. The indigenous life of the planet, swarms of microbes called magic by the people who live there, are what harvest Earth organisms and make copies on Kaimere. As the asteroid which concluded the Mesozoic never struck Kaimere, dinosaurs remain the dominant terrestrial megafauna.
Mustelids, or the weasel, otter, and badger family, are among Earth's most diverse and successful carnivorans. They might not stand out in a lineup of other small carnivorans like meerkat, civet, and ringtails, but there is versatility and triumph to be found in sticking to the basics. Most are small, though the wolverine and several species of otter can grow quite large, and a few prehistoric members could grow massive. Common names of mustelids are often quite misleading. Badger is applied to a wide range of animals not closely related, only linked by body plan. Mink, ermine, ferret, polecat, stoat, and weasel are also often used for animals not united by ancestry, just appearance. The domesticated ferret is likely descended from the European polecat, not any wild ferret, and European mink and American mink belong to separate genera, and so forth. Being fairly basal carnivorans, the clade of mustelids are often extremely similar in behavior and appearance, so this taxonomic confusion is not surprising. Another misleading aspect of mustelids is their aggression. While this is often employed as a bluff, something many other animals use to equal success, it has given them a reputation for bold ferocity and combat prowess that is a bit misplaced. Their aggression is a useful tool to give a pursuer pause, and occasionally they are able to best larger foes. A lot of this stems from them often being slower than pursuers, and thus turning to fight being their best option, not something they would prefer to do. It's not that honey badger don't care, honey badger don't have a choice. There are plenty of exceptions, but mustelids as a general rule hunt burrowing rodents and rabbits. Both the slender weasel morph mustelids are built to slink into the holes after their favored prey, and robust badgers are built to dig into burrows rather than merely follow down the den. On Kaimere, the first animals that may have been mustelids were taken from North America during the Oligocene, and these were animals that may have been sister clade to the Procyon or the common ancestor of both. Numerous basal carnivorans were taken in this harvest, and it is difficult to say what clade they belong to. Animals that often look both gracile and robust mustelids have been reported from Kyrule and are almost certainly from this first Cenozoic harvest, though they have evolved into their own distinct clades, and again it's difficult to say much about their relationships to modern mustelids and procyonids, aside from the fact that they are basal caniforms. These Kyrulan carnivorans are reportedly subordinate to gobiconodont and multituberculate predators of similar build and stature. The first animals that can be confidently described as mustelids were harvested in the Miocene from North America around 14 million years ago, shortly after the dynastic extinction. This was just as the ecology of the known world was in recovery. Why this harvest didn't occur immediately after the extinction event is unknown, though it has been suggested the portal itself was severely injured in this event and needed time to recover. Earth at the time was becoming increasingly cold, arid, and dominated by grasslands, whereas Kaimere was hot, humid, and most of the continental known world was a vast jungle. Grassland-specialized rodents and lagomorphs that the most successful mustelids at the time seem to have been specialized in did not do well in Kaimere, so the weasel-like mustelid harvest in these years seemed to have generally done poorly. Instead, the arboreal procyonids and small Pseudolurus-grade cats occupied these niches. There are reported badger-like mustelids, though quite rare. It must be said that rainforests have a poor track record for fossils, so the badger-like predators may have been more successful than at first glance might appear. However, Since more remains of other small carnivorous are reported, it may be an accurate reflection, even accounting for the meager sample size. An exception to this generally poor trend for mustelid fossilization would be the otters. The first otters introduced to Kaimere were from this harvest, though as far as is presently known, none of these first otters have modern descendants. The giant Durophagous river otter of Kaimere are descended from the Asian harvest 12 million years ago, making them the most ancient mustelids of modern Kaimere. It would not be until 8 million years ago, as central Nikar became increasingly arid, that grasslands began to open up. In the North American harvest 8 million years ago, which seems to have coincided with this trend, grasses and fauna specialized in them have become quite successful in this territory. Mustelids, especially the slendermorphs, thrived as lagomorphs and rodents became staples in this region's small mammal guild. They also have no trouble hunting the resident multituberculates, which were held on to a few niches here, and the smaller burrowing thescelosaurs would also provide viable prey to larger mustelids, at least in their juvenile form. Arville has no known terrestrial mustelids from this time, with small cats, procyanids, mongooses, and civets instead representing this weasel niche in the western continent. Though mustelids appear to have not been found elsewhere, again, this is with a caveat that lush rainforests may be missing specimens from 8 million years to modern times. Central Nikar would be well documented as mustelid territory for both gracile and robust morphs. Otters also came from this harvest and thrived, being the first of this clade to take the sea. Anhydriotherium is not the ancestor of modern sea otters on Earth, indeed has no descendants on our planet, but the many sea otters of Kaimere are generally believed to be descended from this marine species. This animal also has a few representatives that overlooked freshwater niches, notably in Picardia and the southern islands. Thus would be the narrow but notable success of this clade through the anchored period. A massive climate shift around 1.5 million years ago would not only upend the ecology of the known world and result in the extinction of a majority of megafaunal species in most ecosystems, it would also result in new habitats and harvest that would favor a lot of new mustelids. River otters were breakout stars within the past 1.5 million years. Today, several species of river otter are found in most freshwater environments of the continental known world and most of the large and nearshore islands. I cover these species in more detail in this episode. Terrestrial mustelids also shined in this harvest. As southern Arville was hit especially hard and most of the dry temperate forests transitioned to a more arid grassland as the continent crept ever north of the mid-latitude cell that once hydrated it, most resident animals went extinct, and mustelids were among the breakout stars of this region. Weasels, badgers, fishers, and others would find great success here. Many also spread to the Kalin and Kadaneth Islands, reaching Picardia before the sea levels rose, and spreading to many islands became less viable. In the case of some Kalin islands, the depauperate state compared to their own fossil record seems to coincide with the arrival of small mustelids 1.5 million years ago that seems to have hunted many of the endemic island fauna to extinction before perishing themselves not long after. Today, mustelids are found throughout the known world, though they do seem to have their greatest success and diversity in southern Arville and central Nikar. The distribution of otters was covered in a previous episode, and I won't be elaborating on them here. Kaimere's most ancient known terrestrial mustelids are the Taxidiine, or American badgers. Forest badgers are believed to have descended from badgers taken 8 million years ago, perhaps Chamatotaxis or a similar animal, though it's possible their ancestors have been in Kaimere since the first harvest following the dynastic extinction. In broad strokes, they live like and physically resemble American badgers. There's a forest badger in both Nikar and Arvel, which seem to descend from a radiation of Nikari forest badgers that spread south 1.5 million years ago. Despite the name, forest badgers tend to prefer open and grassy regions within a generally wooded area. The lands of the known world may be mostly forested outside of southern Arvel and central Nikar, but there are still scattered regions of open territory, so these badgers can make ends meet. The sand badger of the Hausi Prairie is a burrowing specialist. They are expert diggers. From what has been seen, they were once a fairly diverse and widespread clade, but climate change and faunal turnover has hit them especially hard. The honey badger from northern Africa appears to have done them considerable ecological harm. This species holds on, but it is the last of its kind in the known world. Other species have been reported in Nikar, north of the equator, where Pleistocene mustelids have not yet managed to populate. The sand badger was long assumed to be sister to, or perhaps even a species of honey badger, but genetic studies have backed old morphological indicators that these similarities are superficial and a result of convergent or parallel evolution. They are sister to the forest badger, though diverged not long after harvest around 8 million years ago. Both forest and sand badger have been observed cooperating with both true and pheasant cockatrice and with jackals. The badgers can enter burrows and flush out prey, leaving their companions to catch and kill the fleeing, or chase them back into the burrow, waiting for the hungry jaws of the badger. These cooperative hunts have only been observed during the day. While it's possible it happens at night and simply hasn't been witnessed yet, it does appear to be the result of the badger taking the initiative. After all, both sand and forest badgers usually hunt at night. If they are the ones changing their preferred time of hunting, it is likely this means they are the ones initiating this cooperation, as most cockatrice species are diurnal. That said, individual cockatrice they have worked with in the past often seek them out, sometimes even waking them up to go raid the towns of burrowing rodents. Some argue, since the blue cockatrice and common hyena also express this sort of cooperation, and the hyena also shifts their preferred nocturnal hunts to participate in the daytime routines of the cockatrice, it may be coming from the dinosaurs. Perhaps both animals have their own incentives. It must be said that not all interactions between badger and cockatrice are ever amiable. Badgers have been observed raiding cockatrice nests, and larger cockatrice will hunt badgers. Sometimes they go out on hunts together, but end up competing over and even fighting for the spoils. In at least 2 instances, a cockatrice nested near a badger, and rather than nest raid, the mustelid defended the eggs. Needless to say, it is a relationship that speaks to the complexity of both animals. The American badger Taxidia is found in Kajar and likely taken during the interrupted harvest. Unlike mustelids we will soon cover, they are endemic to Kajar and have not spread beyond the peninsula. Honey badgers are among the most recently harvested mustelids. If their ancestors were included in the Asian harvest 1.5 million years ago, they failed to establish themselves. These are among the most successful mustelids in the Hausi Prairie and appear well on their way to outcompeting the last of the sand badgers. It has been theorized that the more cursorial sand badger species were driven to extinction by the honey badger, and only the digging specialist remains. Honey badgers are proficient enough diggers and get most of their food with this behavior, and the sand badger may be on its last legs. Like their African cousins, they favor rodents as prey and often will hunt reptiles like lizards and snakes, though they aren't terribly picky and can get by on whatever the prairie has to offer. Though they have a reputation for being formidable fighters, and indeed can endure quite a beating thanks to thick, flexible skin that is excellent for repelling penetrating weapons like claws, The cutting teeth of many theropods have proven a reliable weapon against them. While honey badgers have chased young leopards, hyenas, and even much larger predators, cockatrice and young utan have on numerous occasions been reported to quickly bring down these badgers. This is with such success that hyena mothers in the clan that often live with blue cockatrice will call on their aid when badgers are around, as honey badgers are known to kill hyena cubs. Arvelith badgers are, despite the name, not close relatives of Taxidiinae. These descendants of Eurasian badgers are the most successful throughout southern Arvel. This clade was replicated in both continents and possibly Picardia 1.5 million years ago, with a second radiation from Europe 600,000 years ago, but it seems their Nicaria northern Arvelith population failed to outcompete sand and forest badgers, and they are only found in more temperate regions today. They are omnivorous, perhaps more so than any other mustelid, with studies suggesting a strong preference for tubers over any other food source, and invertebrates and carrion only supplementing their diet. While they have been observed hunting with other predators, they do seem content to share their burrows, being found with dozens of species. They are notably obsessed with cleanliness within their dens, having separate latrines, and regularly taking out any refuse. Another omnivorous badger, though this one being more inclined to root for invertebrates while still having the occasional fruit and tuber, is the Arvelith hog badger. They are only found in the densest jungles of northern Arvel. They are assumed to be related to hog badgers of Earth, though as no specimens have yet been collected, they may instead be closer to the forest badgers. The viper or dire weasel is the second largest of Kaimere's terrestrial mustelids. Though long assumed to be a fairly ancient resident of Kaimere, being related to South America's Grisons and therefore coming to Kaimere 6 million years ago, it now seems more likely they are descended from Penonictus harvested from Eurasia 1.5 million years ago. Arriving in the midst of an ecological disaster worked out great for them, and perhaps the mass extinction at the end of the anchored period left vacant niches for them. Females often weigh around 20 kilos, and males can more than double that. As tropical animals, their hair is sparse and coarse, and there is no fat on their already slender bodies. Though not aquatic per se, they often make their residence near rivers and are proficient swimmers and climbers. Mostly they hunt on land near the waterways. Unlike most mustelids, they are diurnal. They are formidable predators, known to strike at much larger prey like thescelosaurs, hogs, and river sloths. However, most of their diet is comprised of much smaller prey like fish, birds, young dinosaurs, and small mammals. They are called viper weasels not only for their serpentine bodies and low-slung gait when they stalk, but also their threat display, which involves hissing and grunting and culminates in standing with a scream and flashing long fangs. Largest of the badgers, and among Kaimere's largest mustelids, is the dire marten Gulo. They are close relatives of the wolverine, though tend to be a bit less cursorial and more proficient at climbing. Fossil reviews suggest they were once present on mainland Arvel in great numbers, and briefly had tremendous success, though lacking reliable places to den has been proposed to why they went extinct as the planet resumed its conventional axial tilt and the southern steppes warmed. Now the mainland population is only found in the highlands. Without ample snow to den in, their cubs would have been vulnerable, and any tree they took would be more efficiently utilized by fishers and martens we will get to shortly. The dire marten varies wildly in size across this range. Males are generally around twice the size of females in a given area. The few still on the mainland of Arvel see this species at its smallest, with males tending to weigh around 15 to 20 kilos. The dire marten is a proficient swimmer and can reach greater sizes in insular habitats. They are, for example, the largest native predator of Roostercrest Island, with males often reaching 30 kilograms. In Kidon, the Arvelith Mountains, and southern Picardia, they are reported to reach 40 kilos, and up to 50 in Calren and several other large Kaline islands. Largest is their rumored population of Blackfish Island, where they are said to reach the size of panthers, though it must be stressed these measurements are very much unsubstantiated. The dire marten is a brazen predator. They can endure terrible punishment, and their size allows them to strike well above their weight class. Their taste for dinosaur eggs has been suggested to be a factor in the extinction of many species, most notably the titanosaurs of southern Arvel, where these giant mustelids were first harvested, and many of the dinosaurs that once occupied the southern islands. The Picardian dire marten has been suggested to be a likely culprit in the extirpation of many native dinosaurs shortly after its arrival 1.5 million years ago, and those Picardian dinosaurs that survived were those either with robust guarding instincts like the Oviraptorosaur Urek, wherein the father will often fast through the roost, tree nesters like the Indrakai, or migrants that adapted to Picardia alongside the threat like the Jurazant, Weochituka, and Ordetaku. All this has ensured their reverence in many local mythologies, though it must be said they are hardly invincible. The dire marten is now endangered or extinct in much of its initial range. It seems that around the time of harvest 1.5 million years ago, when the temperate regions of the known world were much colder, this animal absolutely thrived. Now that the planet has warmed again, they have undergone many localized extinctions, especially in areas with competition like southern Arvel and much of Picardia. Also, dire martens prefer denning and caching in snow, which is often difficult to come by in the modern known world. Now, as the planet warmed, they instead generally den in trees, something that smaller cousins are much better at and therefore outcompete them, or in mountainous regions. As they are poor diggers, they often have to take over the den of some other animal, like a badger and small Thescelosaur. They are still present and quite formidable throughout much of the southern known world, yet, while they are credited for the extinction of dozens of dinosaur species throughout the known world, a majority of their initial range was lost as Kaimere warmed. The dire marten is related to fishers and true martens. These have thrived with much greater success and diversity. Both primarily came from Asia 1.5 million years ago. Martens are more abundant and diverse, with as many as 10 species throughout the known world and territories just beyond, though fishers are still quite abundant in the more temperate regions of the known world. Fishers and martens are generalist hunters and omnivores, with mast from a variety of trees, often making up a seasonal majority of their diet in many species. Fishers are less diverse, with the northern and southern Arvelith fisher, Kidonith, and Picardian fishers all being so close in anatomy and behavior that they are usually considered subspecies and populations of the same animal. The Codrith fisher descends from American stock and has likely hybridized to some extent with these native fishers. The northern fisher has essentially a year-round summer coat, so looks quite different from, say, fishers in southern Picardia in their winter coat, but in broad strokes, it seems to be the same animal. They are clever and adaptable foragers. Though they have a reputation for aggression, this is generally a defensive trait, employed as a bluff to give them a chance to escape. There are numerous species of true marten throughout the known world. Most live quite like the Picardian fisher, which is quite proficient in trees and is a formidable predator of rodents, small multituberculates, and birds. Though they occasionally target larger prey, as is the case with most mustelids, this is not common and usually is the result of preferred game being regionally scarce. While they do not closely bond, males do remain close to females as he mates with, often providing meals as well as protection from other males that might attack their kits. He does not take an active role in parenting, however, and more dominant males tend to take more mates and provide less care. This inclination is most famous in Kaimere's only marten north of the temperate zone, the Chimeran yellow-throated marten, or lâche-tête. When the kits have approached adult size under their mother's care for a few months, often they will live and hunt with their father for several months before striking out on their own once they reach around a year old. This has resulted in a misconception that the lâche-tête is a social hunter. Yes, the kits will participate in a hunt, but it's mostly just the father launching an attack and the kits piling on. Sometimes they will aid, especially as they gain experience, but usually they wander off on their own by the time they are proficient hunters. After all, the father gets the best part of his prey. If they want choice meals, they must make their own kills. The lâche-tête also has the widest range of any terrestrial mustelid in Kaimere, being found throughout Nekar, both the Crescent Peninsulas, and even approaching the equator. A sister species, the Retrueca, is found throughout Arvel and down into Kajar. Though distinct species, they are extremely similar in their range of color morphs, means that captive specimens are almost impossible to reliably tell apart. Often, both will be called lâche-tête. Of mustelids, they are the most proficient in trees. They have been documented chasing monkeys, rodents, multituberculates, and other prey in swift pursuit. Though they still give way to some competitors like small cats, arboreal civets, and sparacidonts, they are admired for their tenacity and agility in hunts, both branches and underfoot. The lâche-tête prefers areas with ample cover, as they lack endurance for long pursuit and are easily killed by much larger predators, but they are still among the most successful mammal predators in terms of range and population. The fur of fishers and martens is famously soft and durable, making them a favored target of fur traders throughout the temperate known world. Fishers and martens have also populated Kajar, though they are not without newly established competition. Neogale, the New World weasels, have 3 species from the interrupted harvest, one of which has proliferated from Kajar throughout Kadan, several southern islands, and quite far through southern Arvel. Most animals from the interrupted harvest were of very small populations, as this was only a few pulses of what normally was a process taking over hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Even so, overcoming a population bottleneck is not unprecedented. There is some debate about the exact diagnosis of these species. The long-tailed weasel tends to be slightly larger than their Earth counterparts, with a length exceeding 3/4 of a meter and weighing close to a kilogram in the largest males. Some consider them a subspecies of the long-tailed weasel of Earth, though others assign their own distinct species. This animal is endemic to Kajar, and is rare these days due to excessive hunting in the fur trade. The other 2 species in this genus are the Kodjareth and sea mink. Sea mink were once thought to be the same animal by this name from Earth, though that is an increasingly a minority opinion, as some argue the sea mink may have only diverged from the American mink since the Holocene, and therefore the Chimeran sea mink may only resemble it due to parallel evolution. Kodjareth mink are small, around the size and appearance of the American mink, and are generally considered the same species. Like the long-tailed weasel, they are endemic to Kajar, though a few have been found in neighboring territories. The sea mink has spread throughout much of Chimere's temperate zones. They are the largest of this genus, with males growing a meter long and weighing upwards of 10 kilos. Despite their name, they are not restricted to coastal environments, and are often found quite far inland, both in Arvel, Picardia, and many Kaline islands. The Kodjareth mink can freely hybridize with them, and appear to regularly do so near Kajar. Some consider these to be the same species because of it, with numerous subspecies being called sea mink. Their fur is prized above many other animals, especially the inland population of more southern latitudes, which tend to have softer and denser coats. It appears to have been hunted to regional extinction in numerous places, most notably in the Kadaneth Islands, but because the sea mink is such a proficient swimmer and so prone to expansion, they have repopulated. The sea mink has a long history of being kept as hunting companions by Kaleen. They will help corral fish into nets, fetch oysters, and other helpful tasks. They are not considered domesticated under the strictest of definitions, mainly because wild sea mink are regularly bred into kept populations. However, these animals can be reliably tamed and trained if they have a good personality for it. Experienced handlers can often recognize fairly quickly if a young mink will take well to training and bonding. These animals are not ideal for house pets, as they often bond with only a single person and can be quite tense, if not outright aggressive, with people who are not their bonded keeper. The genus Mustela are sometimes called true weasels by the assembly, though, as on Earth, many common names include polecat, stoat, ferret, and mink. This genus was first introduced from Asia 1.5 million years ago, and was supplemented by one from Europe 600,000 years ago. While there is at least one found north of Aravella's mountains, generally speaking this is a sort of niche and body plan dominated by mongooses in the tropics and subtropical regions of the known world. These animals are often the smallest mammal predator in their region. Weasels are often admired as among the fiercest and bravest of predators. To the Picardiant, the weasel is a common patron spirit assigned to children prior to their coming of age. In Picardiant folklore, Weasel is often a brave and plucky underdog character, a champion of the young, cunning, and innocent. The Picardiant weasel, unlike most members of the clade, can be readily tamed and trained, making them popular pets for children. They are also domesticated Picardiant weasels, though wild can often be still manned and kept as pets. Their potent scent glands mean they are not always the most popular of pets to some parents, but a few domesticated breeds have at least reduced the potency of this unpleasant habit, and are therefore more popular. Though weasel fur is a common token for Picardiant children, there is a taboo of their inclusion in overseas fur trading. Generally, the Picardiant frown on any fur trade, as it means the bodies are no longer in the island and therefore removed from the reincarnation cycle. But some less conservative Picardiant argue that only the most sacred animals should be so preciously guarded, especially since Picardia is the largest of the temperate regions, and therefore has the most abundant animals with dense, soft, and valuable fur. For economic reasons, some Picardiant religious leaders are resigned to the fur trade off the island, though weasels are among the animals often forbidden from this practice. The Picardiant mink, marten, and fisher, however, are among the more commonly traded furs, as they do not hold the level of spiritual significance to the Picardiant as the weasel does. Other mustelids are kept as pets, but only the Picardiant weasel has been truly domesticated. They have been smuggled off the island, but the Picardiant are quite resentful of these animals being bred and kept off the island for the same religious reasons as they abhor fur of these animals being traded off Picardia. Conversely, on the other end of the spectrum of opinion, the Codgereth weasel is among the most hated of animals. They are able to slip into many domesticated enclosures. The same ferocity and ingenuity that makes them admired by the Picardiant makes the Codgereth weasel capable of slaughtering domesticates far larger than themselves. Their jaws are strong enough to punch through hide and even pierce bone once they latch onto the back or throat. Weasels are often able to kill just as many fowl, rabbits, and small drakes as foxes and poppinhawks, though it is far more difficult to weasel-proof these enclosures. Many falconers train their birds specifically to seek and destroy weasels, and numerous traps have been created to capture them, but it never seems to take long for these sly killers to adjust, coming back ever more devastating. As on Earth, Mustelids are an integral part of the ecology, folklore, and economy of the known world. They are fierce, adaptable, and clever. Their presence, especially in the past 1.5 million years, has had a significant impact on neighboring fauna. Cheers to Garrick for sponsoring this episode. Mustelids are a clade of animals I've appreciated and admired, yet not had a tremendous interest in prior to research for this episode, but I have certainly developed a fondness for them following its execution. Also wanted to give a shout out to Dominic from Wildlife Wire. Dominic has worked with numerous mustelids and had a lot of good insight both from study and first-hand experience. My great thanks to my Patreon patrons for your support, again to Garrick for this episode's sponsorship, and thank you for watching. Cheers, folks!